Howdy, partners. Okay. Labor Day stream. I was supposed to stream yesterday, but I was doing other things. So today I had the day off for Labor Day, of course, if you're in the States. And I thought I would jump on to maintain my every other week thing. Yes, I did actually stream last week, but that doesn't count. That doesn't count for the comic thing. That was Gary Eats, which is a totally different animal. Let's see here. Let's get organized. Okay. What are we talking about today? First of all, what's the deal with this? I thought I would just throw it on. Normally, part of my uniform when I stream, put on my cap. This is actually a likely, not 100%, but likely reference prop for a hat that a character in DvsM 2001 will be wearing. It was fairly inexpensive, and I thought, what the hell? Like, I'll just pick it up just to have it to look at. And you know what? I think I make this work. This shirt doesn't go with it, but this is all right. I got enough Arizona in me to make this work, I think. It's not bad. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, 3 things. I didn't do the 3 things. We're going to skip 3 things this week because I don't have any right next to me that I could just grab. No, we're skipping 3 things. Here's the topic this week. So, as I described in my last comic stream, and I think probably the one before that even, my goal is to be drawing the 4th DvsM comic, DvsM 2001, in October. I would be delighted if I'm drawing it if I start drawing it the first weekend in October. My drawing weeks traditionally start Saturday morning. I get up, I have breakfast, have coffee, whatever I'm going to do, and then I sit down and I start a new page of DvsM. So, keeping with that tradition, I would be starting the page 1 of DvsM 2001 some Saturday in October. I would love it if it was the first Saturday in October, because that gives me more wiggle room to hit my deadline. It gives me more room to be early, gives me more room to be on time if things derail me. Like if I take a week off for Christmas, or if I lose a weekend to, you know, the cat has to go to the vet, or whatever the thing is, you know, it just gives me a little bit more flexibility. I'm still on track to do that, to start drawing first Saturday in October. But it's going to be, I mean, this month is a push to make it happen. I still have a fair number of things. In fact, I'll just say right now, drawing is going to be a relief when I get out of all the last minute things I need to do before I can draw. I still need to take reference photos of 4 more people. 2 are scheduled for this week, 1 on Thursday and 1 on Saturday. So that's good. But then I got 2 more to schedule after that. I am pushing to put together or design a virtual space, virtual set. More on that later, but there's something where to be able to understand like what you would see in that view and what I want to show in that view and what I want to hide because I don't want to draw it and whatever else. I, as with all the DvsMs, love to make basically sets in SketchUp. It helps me understand a space spatially. That sounds redundant, but it helps me understand where things are in relation to each other, and especially from different views. So if I put whatever, let's just make stuff up. If there is a coffee table here and a couch here and then a lamp here, if I'm looking at it from a 3/4 reverse view, how does that look Like, where are things in relation to each other? Without sitting and doing some laborious and tedious drafting or perspective work to kind of figure out, like, where would that be now? I have a SketchUp model. I can just rotate things and see what it would look like. That's one reason. The other reason is if I have a SketchUp model of a set, I can go in and play with views for scenes and find the scene that, or find the view, find the scene, find the panel that is most interesting, most dramatic, whatever. It's identical. It's just a digital equivalent of, let's say you're making a movie or a TV show or something, and you make a set, and then the director comes on and is kind of like looking and like walking around saying, like, you know what? I thought I was going to shoot it this way, but now standing over here, I think this is the shot. I think this is the more interesting view, the more interesting angle. What would it look like if I was low? What would it look like if I was high? What if I was opposite what I was thinking? Whatever. That it allows me to do that. So to me, it's now just a part of my process. There are only 2 locations in 2001 that are dialed in that way, because the vast majority of the book takes place in the woods. And I don't need to, to be honest, peeking behind the curtain, a lot of those wood scenes are going to be, I draw my characters, I get them all done, and then I start drawing trees in the background that just make it look nice. And so it's a forest. It's an organic environment. I don't need to worry about, like, is that the same tree in the same spot? Now, obviously, there'll be consistency if we're going back and forth, like this character, this character, this character, this character talking, and it's the same view. I'll be consistent, but consistent in then I'll be copying and pasting the background. I'm not going to, but otherwise, if it's like, well, this is a different view, I'm not going to sit and map out the forest where all the trees are. Doesn't matter. Like, it's just going to be trees in the background. Anyway, let's see here. Dylan, thank you for coming by. Thank you very much. And what's a little silly is this digital set I'm working on right now is wildly complicated compared to any other digital set I've ever done. And you're only going to see it for a few pages and barely. So when you look at the amount of effort I'm putting into it versus what is actually going to make it to the page, there's probably a pretty big gap there. But the reason I'm doing all that work now is just in case I get to drawing a page on a day or a panel on a day and I decide, like, I want a different view, but I don't know what's around that corner because I never drew it, or I never planned it out, or I don't know what that would look like if I pull back farther because I didn't, and what that means is that in my designated page a week time frame, now I'm spending time going back and designing sets, designing spaces when I should be drawing. So I would rather invest that time now in getting that kind of stuff dialed in, even if I end up not using it. Does that make sense? So I have to do that. I already mentioned photos. There's still a lot of costume design I need to do. There are 6 main characters in this one. Some of them I know exactly how I want them dressed. And others, it's kind of, I don't know yet. That means what I still need to do before I start drawing them is basically just look at a bunch of clothing online. What kind of jacket is this guy wearing? Just look at a bunch of jackets and then settle on a jacket. And then right-click save as a bunch of pictures of that jacket. So when the time comes, I have something to look at when I'm drawing. What kind of boots? What kind of backpacks? Like what kind of, like there's just a lot of little details like that that won't even really be that hard to come up with, but it takes time. Like you need to sit down and you have to decide, like this afternoon, this evening, whatever, I need to figure out what this character is wearing. And you got to look at stuff and you got to pick some stuff, and then settle on it, and then save it in a place where I can find it, where it's like, if I have a character named Sam, you know, Sam's jacket, Sam's pants, Sam's boots, you know, like all these things. So again, day of, when I'm drawing, I'm not going through 55 images I saved of clothing. Like I'm looking for, where are all the Sam jacket references I saved? Okay. One of the big all-encompassing thoughts for this week's stream is, it's a lot of little details and making sure all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed in a way that sounds really tedious and fastidious and maybe even anal. And I can't push back on that. It kind of is, but I feel like I just need that before I can confidently go and draw. So in the thumbnail, I mentioned, in the description for this video, I mentioned that in going back, like I'm trying to get organized to draw. So I'm looking at all the research I've already done to see, like, what have I already done and where are there still gaps? What do I still not know? And some stuff I feel pretty good. I know what kind of vehicles we're going to see. I know some of the equipment. I know, like, okay, we're going to see this hat, probably. You know, there's some stuff where it's like dialed in, understood. I know where this takes place, blah, 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 blah. There are other things when I've been looking back where I realize I thought I had solved this, answered this question, and now I'm realizing there's a problem. And I put together a little presentation to show you a few of the little things that have been giving me headaches this past week. Okay. One of the characters in the story, like the way it's explained in the story, and I'm not going to change, I'm in artist Gary mode now, so I'm not going to go back and rewrite for the benefit of writer Gary. Or for the benefit of artist Gary. I'm not going to rewrite writer Gary's script. Writer Gary says that one of the characters, Manny, that's his little call name, like his call sign, it's not his actual name, brings his own personal shotgun on this trip / mission they're on, sort of against orders. He was not explicitly told not to, but it's sort of understood that he was not supposed to. So I initially did some research in what's probably the kind of shotgun that a special forces guy would choose to own personally, and also use like as needed, you know, once in a while when he has the opportunity to build his own kit for, you know, some sort of thing, some op he's on, like he could use it for that, but also it's one that he would want to own himself. He would spend his own money on. And I did some research and I was looking around and I settled on what you see, the first shotgun here, the Mossberg 590A1 tactical model. You got the pistol grip, you got the stock, you know, it's clearly more of a combat oriented. I think these were made for both military and law enforcement use. I mean, civilians can get them, but it was intended more for, it's a working shotgun. It's a combat shotgun. I liked it. I felt good about it. I had some cardboard cutouts of it made for Scott Loss to hold as a reference, like to show, you know, like just to get a sense of how far is like this hand from this hand and how does it look and how big is it on a person's frame and etc. In going back and just checking all my work, I now have doubts about the Mossberg 590A1 for two, well, it's really one main reason. It's a little fuzzy to me. I can't believe how difficult this is to dial in, but it's a little fuzzy to me when the 590A1 was available to purchase. I know when it was being worked on. I know when supposedly it was out and available, like released for military and law enforcement use. But it's unclear to me when a civilian could go into a gun shop and buy one. And I've gotten differing dates. Some are a little like a year or two or a few years before when this story takes place, 2001. And at least one source I found was a year after when this story takes place, which is just enough reason to make me go, ugh, like, I don't know if I want to do this. And especially since in the context of the story, Manny has this shotgun. This is his shotgun. It's his personal shotgun. I'm having trouble justifying rationally that this guy somehow has had a shotgun that brand new and maybe barely available to civilians, and that's his personal shotgun he happens to bring on this trip. I tend to feel like Manny would have an equally decent tactical shotgun that was several years old, that he had for a while, that he had confidence in, that it was sort of his personal shotgun. And that's when I went back and I was like, all right, so what was just before the Mossberg 590A1? What's a tactical model that, again, would fit all these criteria? That good tactical shotgun, something that a military type person would like, but also was commonly available for some time. Like it makes sense that he could have had this for a while. And that's when I settled on the Mossberg 500 Persuader. Now that came out in like 87. Perfect. Like that's a good chunk before. If he picked one up in 90 or something like that, this is a gun maybe that he's had for a while, like even a decade, and he's very comfortable with. It's his go-to when he's able to bring a shotgun, or it's the one he has at home. It's his, I always kind of roll my eyes at this as self-defense shotgun, which to me is like a self-defense howitzer or something. It's like, that seems like overkill, but to me, I'm more comfortable with this. But this created, you know, and maybe it was only like an hour or two, but pain in the ass backtracking of like, okay, so what kind of shotgun is Manny carrying? Deciding on this one, finding a bunch of reference images of this one, trying to decide if I need to tweak the distance between, so let's say, okay, I've already taken reference photos of Scott Lost as Manny holding a shotgun. Is the distance between pistol grip and rack, like the rack, meaningfully different between these two? Do I need to, when I draw, like adjust for that? Like his hands seem to be in slightly different positions. Is this, you know, are all the necessary elements in similar or different places based on the reference photos I took? Like, where's the safety? Where do you load it? How do you load it? Like things like that. How this stock, like, you know, how is that the length the same? It looks pretty identical, but this begins a spiral for me of like, okay, do I need to change anything I'm doing? Because now I've changed what shotgun this character uses in the comic. So far, knock on wood, I don't have any, this is all a fake desk, but I feel like the differences are pretty inconsequential. There's a big drawing difference that I'll be doing, but otherwise should be fine. That's one example. Check the chat real quick, and then we'll go on to the next example of me checking my work. Let's see here. Yeah, I think so too. I wanted a nice balance. It's funny you said that, Dylan, because I had one hesitation with the Mossberg, the 590A1, and it was before I knew the dating reservation. the look of it to me is just a little too, I don't know how to articulate this. Gun people might appreciate this. To me, it looks a little too fake cool, you know? It's a little too, like, it looks like a shotgun you would put in a video game. And in my experience, as someone who grew up in Arizona, as someone who grew up shooting, who knows something about guns, who knows people who are responsible, lifelong gun users, there's like flashy bullshit that like posers shoot, like AR-15s and things. And then there's practical, reliable workhorse weapons that people who really know about firearms lean toward. And to me, when I look at these two, what I like about the 500, not only does it fit all my criteria for era, it looks more practical and no, it's not flashy. And I feel like, especially a special forces guy, he's not looking to like, look at this badass. He's looking for a workhorse. It's a tool. It's a tool that serves a purpose that he feels like he encounters from time to time. And it looks more practical to me. I don't know. So I think that just fits his character more. This also becomes like a character, like what kind of chicks would he eat question. I feel like Manny, the character, as I understand him, would favor a no frills kind of weapon over something that's a little slick. Just my take. Let's see. I love when writer and artist Gary refer to themselves in third person and talk about. Yeah, well, both writer and artist Gary agree that Radiohead is possibly the best band in the history of recorded music. He could also be a time traveler. Let's see here. I have a suggestion, modify. A dude like that wouldn't be satisfied with stock. I would recommend a pistol grip and shortened barrel. I absolutely think he would prefer pistol grip. I'm not convinced he would like a shortened barrel. I think, just the way I imagine this, I think he would be concerned. There's two things. First of all, he's loading slugs. So you just there, it's clearly opting for power and accuracy over like a scatter shot. You know, he's not looking to, you know, punch a giant hole in something. He's looking to punch a very specific, powerful hole through something. So I think he wouldn't want to sacrifice the accuracy that would go with a shortened barrel. Especially, and this gets into spoilers, what he knows he's bringing it for. He's looking for penetration. He's looking, and for some level of precision. So it wouldn't be like home defense, maybe shortened barrel is okay, like whatever. He would be like, no, I want to be able to place my shots, which are slugs, if that, you know, makes any sense. Let's see here. I heard a few writers discussing guns, and they said that modifying it gets rid of a lot of nitpicking because it can. And the only part, so looking again at this, the Persuader, there are a couple elements I don't know how I feel about. And it's mostly involving the stock. And this, like, I don't know exactly, there's probably a specific term for this, but this, I don't know if you can see my cursor, this structure on the stock to hold shells. I don't love that. I don't think it's personally practical. I think there's a good chance when you're, you know, getting into position with it, you're bumping it, it's getting in the way. It like maybe you're I don't love in my experience, I think it's far more likely he would have a pouch with a bunch of shells that he can just reach into and reload when he needs to. Like having this weird fiddly thing, it also allows him to keep the gun in a reasonable position without that if he's loading from his hip or something. I don't think I'm going to have that. I'll probably be looking at stocks when the day comes to draw Manny holding his shotgun. I might go back and really like, is this the stock? I don't know. I don't know if that's the stock. Again, I like the pistol grip. I'm also not sure about this. I don't know, some of that barrel stuff. I don't know. There might be things that I mess with or not. I don't know. I mean, that would be fun to draw with all the little venting. It's not really venting. It's like a cooling and weight thing on the barrel sheath or whatever you would call that. But let's see here. Fake cool. See, I don't know if I'll get into this juxtaposition, but there is some. I don't know how much of it will make it to the final comic. There is some suggestion, there's a whiff in the air in the book about these actual professional soldiers kind of being snooty about weekend warriors. Obviously, everyone's different. You can find exceptions to every rule. But in my experience, again, limited however it may be, but growing up in Arizona, growing up in gun culture, meeting lots of different people who are all levels of firearm experience and knowledge. And this might be prejudicial, this might be snooty or whatever, but in my experience, it's the less experienced people who are kind of fanboyish and into the bullshit. And the people who are real old school firearm family people, they're not impressed or excited by all that. So again, picturing the characters that I'm writing about who are professional soldiers. And when I say professional soldiers, I mean that in every sense. They're not just, these aren't enlistees. These aren't weepy draftees. These aren't people who are going in to get, money for college. These are special forces guys. Their whole life is devoted to being the best. They take it all very seriously. These aren't dummies. These are serious warriors, and I just feel like they would be a little more practical in every regard to this, but including what sort of equipment are they choosing for themselves. Just my impression. Go for that character. Short and barrel, pistol grip, no butt. Rail with extra. Oh, absolutely. I think he would want the butt. Just because, again, for control. Like if he's looking to fire this thing fast and accurately, yeah, no. Long barrel, pistol grip for sure, definitely a butt. And then the rail, I can't decide. That could be a personal bias. Like, I've never loved the rails. So what I'll probably do is just call up a bunch of images of actual military personnel using combat shotguns and see how they're handling the shells. Where are they keeping them? To see what's like. To me, it just doesn't seem practical, but I'm not a soldier. And I've never had to fire like a shotgun in a combat setting. So I can't, it's hard for me to me, I would be like, no, you wouldn't want that, but maybe you would. I don't know. I have to think about that. Yeah, slugs. No, he wanted, because, well, I can't get into spoilers. There's a not everyone has a rifle. You'll remember because you read the script. And my imagination is he's unhappy with that. That he would like more weapons that can be effective in a certain set of circumstances. And my imagination is for just bureaucratic military reasons. They said, this is the equipment we're giving you. This is that category of weapon, rifle. This is what you can carry. So it's this kind of breaking the rules in a slippery way where it's like, well, you said I couldn't have a rifle, but this isn't really a rifle. This is a shotgun, so I'm going to bring this. It's that kind of, slippery thing. My dog food. I think it does make sense about being weekend warriors. They're a little cocky, if not a lot cocky. Yeah, I have no experience in the gun community, but I've seen it with it. Yeah, no, it's. I mean, the vast majority. Again, this is my hot take. The vast majority of gun people you'll meet are not serious gun people. They like to play that they are. I would categorize them as weekend warriors. And sort of, again, just posers. Like they're playing G.I. Joe. They're grown-ups playing G.I. Joe. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. And these characters in this story are not those people. These characters are based on the people that I've known, that I've grown up with, that I remember when I was a kid, like older people, like serious people who aren't into like, I don't want to call out any kind of specific behavior, but just they're not doing the silly, like, they don't have "don't tread on me" flags on their truck. It's a different culture. Okay. All right, next slide. This is a very stupid, narrow thing, but another example of like me checking my work. So I had imagined one of the characters, just for some local flavor. People have seen this before, if you've watched my streams, was wearing some kind of small town local retro establishment that no longer is in business, but has like a period kind of local color or quality to it. And I went on to eBay and I started looking for like vintage trucker Arizona hat, vintage trucker Phoenix hat, vintage Arizona Flagstaff trucker hat, whatever, just finding all these different things. Finally settled on this. I was like, perfect, that's exactly what I'm looking for. It was inexpensive. I bid on it on eBay. I won it. I got it. This is another thing, kind of like the 590A1. I had reference photos of someone wearing this hat. Decided maybe I should make sure, A, this business was in business in 2001, and B, it's no longer in business. Well, I think in one of these previous streams, it came up that actually it's still in business, and I was like, well, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, why am I don't know anything about this place. I don't know if I want to be advertising them in a comic. I don't know if they would appreciate that. And then second, when I was like, well, when did it actually open? And I went to the Better Business Bureau and looked it up. 2011, 10 years after the story takes place. So I still haven't decided what the solution is. Yeah, Dylan, you're the one who pointed out like, oh, it's still up there, which I was like, oh no. But I'm glad you did, because it started me like checking my work on this. So now I have two options and I haven't settled on it. The easiest option is to slightly modify this logo into something that does not exist, like B&B Automotive, or P&R, or R, whatever, like I could got R as some kind of just, or I could remove the R&R and have just like a silly design of a car. Like, I don't know, like I could modify this to a point where it's not R&R. I guess there's a third option here that I don't intend to take, which is I could leave it be and who cares? I'm not the type to do that. So there's something this needs to be addressed. I'm either going to alter the logo and just draw it a little differently every time I draw it. Or I will come up with I'll make some other thing up and just whole cloth replace the emblem on the trucker cap every time I draw it. I haven't settled on that yet. What I originally wanted to do, just because to me, I love to find weird little period things, that just small things that you just don't see anymore. This character's cap was originally going to be a cap for chewing tobacco. And I think the reason I got away from it is because I found a chewing tobacco brand that's no longer in business, that it had a nice retro look. But it's also a little, I don't know if it matters. It's a little problematic where it was like, there's like a Native American, it's like Red Man Tobacco or something like that. And part of me, that's part of what I liked about it. It's like, that's even more weird and period. And that's even more something you wouldn't see today. But then on the other hand, like, again, I grew up in Arizona. I'm sensitive to being insensitive to Native Americans. Like, I just don't want to, like, so even if it's like, yeah, you know, I could picture the character wearing that, and yeah, like it would fit, and yeah, it's like it harkens to a not so distant but kind of different time where maybe you would see someone wearing a hat like that, especially up north, especially in rural Arizona. But I also just wasn't sure I was in love with that. I still haven't decided on this. This is on a to-do list of like, what am I doing with the hat? What is on the hat he's wearing? And I just don't know. I might have to go back and do a lot more research in like Arizona small businesses that are no longer in business that were around in 2000. You know, something like I don't know, and just come up what's a cool kind of vintagey, retro-y kind of logo that would work. So this is a to be solved problem. This, just again, and Jim Lujan is especially going to roll his eyes at this because he's usually the one giving me a hard time about the depth I go in. I need to figure out how much gas costs, a gallon of gas costs in Arizona, specifically Northern Arizona, which is usually a little more than the Phoenix area, in October 2001. And I had to go down the rabbit hole of, there's actually like data out there, but you just have to dig for it. And finding what is the average price of a gallon of gas in Arizona. Now, and by the answer I came up with, it's probably about $1.40. It might be a little higher than that because, again, this is Northern Arizona. And in my experience growing up here my whole life, gas is as cheap as it's going to be in the Phoenix area. And anytime you go up north and into the mountains, like it goes up. So I'm going to have to probably decide, like, what is the up north tax? You know, like how much more are you paying for gas because you're so why does this matter? Why do I even care about that? Well, part of the things I've been working on is talking about making a SketchUp virtual set. I've got to come up with like a little podunk Northern Arizona fill up and repair shop. This is work in progress. I still got to do a bunch of signage and, you know, other things. And there's little details I still need to do with the model, but it's getting there. It's the gas pumps, there's some modifications I need to do to make them right. But most of all, what I need is when you see this, it's very likely you're going to see a sign that's advertising how much gas is. When you think in your head, like, what do you expect to see at a gas station? There'll be a sign that says how much it costs a gallon. And so if I'm doing a comic set in 2001 and I got to come up with a number, now I think some people, and this is not a bad thing, it's probably the smarter thing, it's probably the wiser thing. They would frame the shot differently so you don't see the sign. They would conveniently have a tree going in front of the price. or something, just to dodge it, just to not have to come up with like, I don't know how much gas was in 2001 in Northern Arizona in like late in the year. But to me, it's, again, 15, 30 minutes extra work, Googling, following links, looking at like government spreadsheets, like, so that this is gettable information. And it just adds, again, to these little details that are accurate. And this goes back this comes up every few streams, but I first brought it up like half dozen streams ago. DvsM, I have in a way created a monster for myself, where I expect that level of accuracy. I think in a way I've created an expectation for that with the audience. And it's too late now to say like, you know what, whatever, doesn't matter. Like DvsM has a quality to it, an expectation to it, that this is just, that's part of it. Part of it is having those little period details. Part of it is having it really accurate. It was the original strategy when I set out to make this series is I want the only disbelief I want suspended in this series is the dinosaurs and the aliens. That's it. Everything else needs to be completely plausible and accurate whenever I can do that, whenever I can manage that. That was always my intention. I'm halfway through this series, working on the 4th out of 6. This is too late to say, like, way too late to be saying, like, you know what, never mind. Like, let's just kind of make this more comic booky and who cares. Making this has been fun. Yeah, I appreciate, the Adobe style. Yeah, it's so this is based on, it's different. I changed a lot of things because I don't want it to be that Phillips station, but it's based on a Phillips station in Pine, Arizona, which is not far from where this story takes place. It's up north. It's in kind of a woodsy area. But there are lots of little changes I wanted to make. And because, again, well, first of all, it's not set in Pine. It's not supposed to be that specific gas station. And there were specific changes I needed to make because I have this vision of what the interior looks like, and I need to make the exterior consistent with that. So I'm putting windows in slightly different places. I'm making the door kind of different. I'm putting doors where there weren't doors. I'm removing windows where there were windows. Like, I'm changing things. I have different thoughts about, because here's just to let you into the madness. I'm picturing this place being a little higher elevation than the one I'm basing it on, where there would be more snow. And therefore, there's a concern about snow piling on the roof. Therefore, you have that drain pipe, and see on the very right edge, where there's a roof there way below the top kind of line of the building, where as the snow melts, it will drain off through those pipes. There's pipes in there. Like, things about that, it's like, oh, because this is winter, it's going to, like a higher altitude place, it's going to look a little different. I thought the lighting should be different. I thought, with the garage, I put a door where I think the mechanics, the shop side goes in and out. I put a little lighting there, and you can see this dark box to the left of the door. To me, I decided they would have a key drop. So if you're parking your car to get worked on and you need to drop your keys for them to get when they're open, like, there would be something like that. I imagine that the garage is not connected to the gas station, so they would have their own entrance and exit, and when it's open, the door, the garage doors will be open. But that door is like just a heavy steel door because you don't want people stealing tools. You don't want people stealing cars at night. So I guess it'd be a little tighter. They wouldn't have windows and things. The gas station maybe does, though I'm probably going to put some kind of bars, some kind of security stuff on the door and windows. It's thinking all that through of like, what would this place look like? The lights I put on the building, those are also, I felt like there would be some kind of, flood lighting outside to show off. Like, I got to name the place still. I don't know what it's going to be. It's all these little thinking of all the details, testing your powers of observation, testing yourself, thinking like, if you pull up to a gas station, what do you see? What's out front? Especially a gas station up north. You see firewood for sale. You see a garbage can. You see an ashtray. You see the ice machine. Is there like one of those propane cages, that has all the propane tanks? I don't know if I'm going to have that there or not, but that's probably something. Just all trying to make it seem like a real place, an actual place. Like, what does it look like? So this exterior is mostly done. Like I said, I need to add a bunch of signage and maybe some more security features. And then I have to decide if I care about like painted parking lines. I can't decide what kind of place this is. I've been to a lot of gas stations up north where it's not even paved. It's just sort of lava rock and mud and dirt, like compacted dirt. So maybe that's all this is. I don't know. I got to think all that through. So anyway. All right. There are two types of creators, Gary and I, who love to research small details, and then non-Gary and Dylan, who don't love to do small details. I really do have a love-hate. I see this as an indispensable part of the process, especially for the process of doing a DvsM. I feel good when it's done. I can't say I love doing it. It just gives me, it just feels like a necessary step, and it gives me some confidence when it comes to the drawing, when it comes to the realizing this space for an audience. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I've seen that too, like the really big tanks where they put like those barriers around it so a car can't crash into it. So that might be something where I'll do it. But then again, I'm also picturing it as a small rural fill-up station where maybe it doesn't even have that. So I don't know. I might get away with minimal because I really picture it as being kind of in the middle of nowhere, as sort of a last stop before you're off into just the wild. So that's where I am. Today, my goal is to finish the exterior of the gas station. So signage and things. I got to come up with a name for it to put like a name thing. It'll probably be an inside joke, like an Easter eggy thing. And then I don't know if I'll get to finish it today, but I need to start building out the interior. The interior, I don't need too much of it. I don't need to build out the entire shop, but I need at least the checkout counter, a cash register, and then all the stuff you would see in that area. So whether it's like racks of chips, or the thing I'm still debating on is what is behind the cashier on the wall. And because that's something you would see in the way I'm picturing it. And it will lend to the air of authenticity of this space. I'm debating between, given that thought, I'm debating between two things. I'm debating between tobacco products, so like not just cigarettes, but like cigars, chewing tobacco, like all that kind of stuff, pipe tobacco, or alcohol. I feel like it'll be one of those two things. Both are a pain, because if you're trying to avoid IP, you're making up a bunch of alcohol and you're making up a bunch of cigarettes or whatever you're making up. There is a good little dingy but well-stocked liquor store here in town that I thought about. I could go and I could take some pictures of their shelves and use that as a reference. And it would look right. And it also is plausible that like this little shop has their big bottles back behind. They don't have it just back, out with the chips and the coolant and the gum. They have the alcohol behind the counter. But bottles are big and bottles are recognizable, and it would necessitate me coming up with a bunch of fake bourbons, fake scotches, fake whiskeys, fake tequilas for background imagery. And that sounds horrible. Like, I don't know if I want to do that. If I do cigarettes and like chewing tobacco and things, like let's say behind him there's like just a wall of chewing tobacco tins. That's small enough where you can kind of make out what it is, but it's too small to read anything. And I can just generalize label. I can do like some with a stripe and some with a circle with a figure on. Like I can just do this I can suggest designs and not really get lost in like, what's the name of this fake tobacco? Where if I do fake whiskey, I'll have to kind of sit and think about like, what does that label look like? See, I think I'm talking myself out of the liquor. I think it needs to be small things that I don't have to kill myself drawing. Yeah, so I need like a tobacco wall. Tobacco wall. I think that's what it's gonna have to be, because it just, yeah. And I can even do some packs of cigarettes, but like generalize them in a way where it suggests like Winston or Marlboro, but it's not actually written on it, or it's too small to read. So it has that air of authenticity, like, oh, looks like that's probably a Camel or something, but you can't really read it. Tobacco wall. So at least I made that decision. That's something. Yeah, so then otherwise I have references for cash registers that would make sense in that period, especially like would not have been new for that time, because this is a little dingy up north fill-up station. They're not going to have some modern cool register that came out 2 years before, modern being like 1999. They'd probably have some register from like 1990, 1992 or something like that. So looking at like what kind of register, and you can, this is where I think sometimes the research is good, because your brain can come up with cliches and tropes. When I say old-timey, rural, Western fill-up station with an old-timer behind the counter, maybe you're better than me, but my mind immediately pictures like an Old West, like, like this crazy old cog and wheel device from like 80 years before that. And that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at something that would be plausible in like the early 90s, but still around in 2000. That people are still using in 2000. Yeah, I have pictures of that. So I'll probably make a simple SketchUp model just for scale purposes, just to get a sense of like what that looks like from that angle. That interiors are totally different from exteriors. Exteriors, I was very mindful of scale. I was thinking about how big everything is. But interiors, now you're really getting to like, how high is this counter? And how wide is this? And where is the ceiling? And does that make sense? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, once I start drawing, it'll be a relief because I'll be done with all this. But in fact, once I get out of, I think, this location planning, it will be a relief. Because this stuff, it really is, again, tedious and a little anal, but also, I know this from my day job, because this is why I even fiddle with SketchUp, is because I learned SketchUp for my day job to do crime scenes. And maybe that's part of where all this fastidiousness is coming from, is when you're doing crime scene reconstruction, good enough isn't good enough. Like, it needs to be exact. Where is that? How deep is that cabinet? How tall is this counter? How wide is that door? How long is that hallway? Where is the knife on the ground? Exactly. How far is it from the table leg? Like, this is stuff that you're not eyeballing. You're trying to get that as exactly as humanly possible based on all the resources you have, all the information you have. And in a way, maybe that's part of it. It's like that's the same approach I take to coming up with DvsM. It's like, let's get specific. Let's really dial this in. What would that look like? What is accurate? What was gas in October 2001? What kind of shotgun would this guy carry? When did he buy it? And just, what kind of baseball cap? What kind of cowboy hat? Etc. Again, it feels right. I can't say it's fun. Drawing will be a relief, but I'm almost there. What is this? I got a month. A little more than a month, because the first Saturday in October is not the 1st of October. So I have a little more than a month. At the end, next time we talk, 2 weeks from now, I think I'll be in a much better place, much more relaxed. I might be a little anxious anticipating having to draw, because that's a whole new set of, challenges and problems and skills and everything. But all the heavy lifting prep should be done by then. Heavy lifting prep being like set design. And most of the live reference model prep should be done. And what isn't done should be scheduled. This is me kind of also like setting goals for myself. And if I remember right, it will be just before my first actual road trip up north to get some environmental reference photos, which is, for this comic, important, but like something that just the way it worked out is going to be like one of the last things I do, is going up, taking hundreds of pictures of trees, lots of pictures of the view, lots of pictures of the mountains, lots of pictures of cliffs and boulders and what the ground looks like. Is it grassy? Is it just covered in pine needles? Is it muddy? Like, what does it all look like? And not just collecting reference where it's like, I want to draw a tree like this, or I want to make sure this is the kind of tree we're seeing because that's the right tree for this area. But also really hoping for inspiration, just like when I shoot a live model. When I'm shooting live models, sometimes I'm looking for, like, I'm open and looking forward to them doing something that it's like, oh, I didn't even think of that, but that that's a fun idea, or that's a fun look, or I didn't, you know, I want to, that's a neat idea that I want to recreate with the drawing. I'm hoping when I'm up looking at the woods and looking at the mountains, I'll see things that make me go, oh, that's interesting. And I'll look back at my script and say, what if I tweak this a little like this, so I can incorporate this little discovery I made when I was up north. Yeah, I go up to Flag at least once a year, but this is a different part that I haven't been up to in a long time. Or not really. I'm going up to... So the first trip will be up to the Muggian Rim, which is, for people, you know, who may not know, it's a little northeast of Payson, which is northeast of Phoenix. The rim is like it's a rim. It's like a cliff edge that runs about 40 miles east-west, that looks down over this forested area beneath, and there's forest behind it. There is a road that goes all along it. It's like a scenic drive that goes all along it. There's lots of places to pull off along that 40 miles to take pictures and, you know, take in the view and hike around a little bit. I'm going to drive the entire length of it. And I'm going to just look for, just with an empty camera up, for like taking pictures of anything and everything that may or may not help me. That's a for sure trip. That trip is happening. A weekend later, there is a tentative trip. By the way, Muggian Rim, where I'm going to be, is some of it's Coconino County, Coconino National Forest. Some of it is Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. I'm most interested in the Apache Sitgreaves area because that's where my story takes place. So the following weekend, if I feel I didn't get all the things I really wanted in that trip, Louis, if I feel like I didn't get everything I wanted to see in the first trip, the second trip is going to be deep into Apache Sitgreaves, like Two Forks or Hannigan Meadow or places like that that are extremely eastern Arizona, like almost at the New Mexico border. It's deeper forest. It's a little more wild. It's actually where I picture this book taking place. If I feel like I don't have enough unique character of that area from my initial trip, I will probably drive out again and collect, you know, whatever material I want from deeper out there. The downside to that, and this is why I'm hoping I'll kind of get everything I think I need from the Muggian Rim trip, is the deeper wood trip is like a 5-hour drive each way. Like it's out there because there's a reservation between where I am and where I'm going. And it's national park and mountains and all this stuff where you can't, it's not as a crow flies. You kind of have to go around this big area to end up where you want to go. So it would be a long day. I'd probably be getting up early and pushing, because I don't know if I'd want to stay overnight out there. I mean, it's just a lot of money for taking pictures of trees and rocks and woods and mountains. But it'd probably be an early morning, setting out at, you know, not that early because I got to eat and stuff, but setting out at 8 or 9, getting where I'm going early afternoon, spending a few hours out there, hiking around, taking all the pictures I can, getting everything I think I need because I'm probably not going to come back, heading back for civilization, late afternoon, so I'm not driving into the sun when it's setting, and then getting home in the late evening. Like, it would be a long day, but kind of like all these fucking details of like how much was gas. Exhausting, but it would give me a lot of confidence. It would make me real. And again, maybe I would find inspiration. I'm sure I will. Like, I'm sure if I went out there, I would see things that's like, that is very cool, and I need to work that into a panel. That is very interesting. That is a thing where it's like, I want something like that. Or this gives me a new idea of how this particular sequence plays out, or whatever. So it's penciled in on my calendar. Possible, Apache Sick Breeze trip. We'll see. Let's see here. Yeah, Ponderosa is mostly what you're going to see. Been to all three of those places. I went to college in Flagstaff, right there. I've not had a Mungian monster encounter. I'm open to it, but I'm not. Maybe I will. Maybe I will see it. It'd be a very full day, for sure. But how motivated I am to do it is going to totally depend on how I feel after the Mungian trip. Because that won't be nearly. That's like a 2-hour. It's not that far. You're in the woods, like you're out of the desert, but it's a much smaller commitment to drive the Mungian Rim. It's still a day trip, but it's not a full day. It's a long day. We'll see. Okay. I think that's all I have today. Yeah, I think that's all I want to discuss at this point without risking getting into spoilers. Prep is going well. Like I'm feeling good. And the only things I'm anxious about are the stuff that I haven't thought about yet. Like, for example, like, what is this character wearing? When I think about, in a few weeks, I want to be drawing. Page 1, you don't see a character. It's like an establishing shot, but page 2 is where you first see people. When I think about drawing page 2, the anxiety comes from like, I don't know what some of these characters look like yet. So, but I have like 5 weeks. So that is a very solvable problem. Yeah, I don't remember. I don't feel, it could be different now. I don't think NAU had much of a paleontology department because I was interested in paleontology. And when I got to NAU, because they didn't really have a program for that, I switched to archaeology initially. They have a good department for that. Paleontology, it seems like locally, like Arizona, that's ASU or U of A. My memory at the time, like when I was going to college, which is, 25 years ago, U of A was the superior program. Because I think they had Johansson down there. But ASU was okay. I just knew I didn't want to go to ASU. I didn't want to go to ASU or U of A. Like, no shade for the Tucson folks out there. I've always found Tucson one of the most boring cities I've ever been to. Like, the idea of living down there, I was like, absolutely not. And ASU, like, I grew up in Phoenix, and I was eager for the opportunity when I went to college to go someplace, like, live someplace different. And Flagstaff, first of all, it's just a cool town. It's a cool school. They have a very good anthropology department, which is my major. And there's trees, there's snow, there's mountains, there's seasons. Like when you grew up in the desert, just the fact that you can go outside and it's beautiful out, it was like paradise. I loved it. I loved every minute in Flagstaff. Flagstaff was fantastic. I graduated in 99. I was there from like 96 to 99. So, still sick. It's, you know, kids, man, teaching. Which reminds me, like, I hear there's an updated COVID vaccine coming, or maybe even out now, that I've got to look into and schedule. For me, it's a drag because I've every time had a reaction to it where I have like flu-like symptoms from our like 8 to 16 post shot. So I kind of have to be mindful about it. It's not like a flu shot where I can just get it and whatever. Like I have to kind of think about when am I getting it because I'm going to feel like shit afterward. But I do intend to get it. I have, knock on wood, not yet had COVID. I don't want to get COVID. And if I do get it, I don't want to have too tough a time with it, which is why I like to get the vaccine. And I, you know, believe in science. Okay. How many Nazis did I punch as an archaeology major? I don't remember having an opportunity to punch any Nazis. Because I didn't do field work. I did get the leather jacket, though. As you did, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that could be. That's very, very possible. I would have picked that had I. My life might have been totally different because when I was getting ready to go to college, I was like, I want to major in paleontology. I was totally nuts about paleontology, and NAU didn't have that program, so I was like, well, archaeology gets me, like, I was very interested in dinosaurs, but I also have been very interested in early hominids, human evolution, and all that. So I was like, well, I'll pivot to that. You know, it's still the same kind of area of interest broadly. So when I got there, these are all subdivisions of, well, paleontology isn't, but archaeology is a subdivision of anthropology. So my major was anthropology, specializing or focusing in archaeology. And it's a great school for archaeology. Because not only, I mean, any place in Arizona is going to have a decent archaeology program because there's sites everywhere. You have to be interested in Native American archaeology. Like if you're interested in ancient Greece or Rome, or you know, like you're going to be disappointed. But like if you're interested in Native American, like Mesoamerican stuff or whatever, you can find work. And especially here publicly, before you can develop anything in an undeveloped area, you have to have archaeologists come in and make sure there are no Native American sites somewhere that you'd be disturbing. Like you got to clear it first, and if there are, then that creates a whole new sequence of events. So there's work if you want to go into archaeology. Anyway, I was an archaeology major, anthro/archaeology major for the first year, I think. And then I got an internship at the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office with their forensic anthropologist. And then that changed everything. I was like, I want to do forensic anthropology. So I changed, they don't have, that's a grad thing, but if you want to go on the forensic anthro track, your focus as an anthro major should be something like physical anthropology, which is what I changed mine to, with the intention of going to grad school to be a forensic anthropologist. That ended up not happening, but that ended up being my path, and it's something that I use in my day job today. I don't know if that's interesting for anybody, but that's how I ended up. That was the windy road. Let's see here. Triangle power is complete. Yeah, Northern Arizona is great. And I always feel like I need to mildly evangelize it because, especially if you're not from Arizona, I think people have a conception of Arizona of like saguaros and red rocks and mesas and desert. And they don't realize that there are parts of Arizona in the north and in the east that are forests and snow and mountains, and there's skiing, and there's like, it's a totally different thing. So like, and well, of course I have some affection for the Phoenix area and desert, like desert Arizona. I've always loved more than anything else Northern Arizona. Like that's my where my heart is. I know, crazy, right? Someone who cares about, you know, facts, evidence, rationalism, scientific rigor. It's weird that then I would, if I cared about and made a career out of all those things, would be turned off by someone like RFK Jr. Weird. Wild. Anyway. Then Callie drove through New Mexico to get to Texas. Amazing. But yeah, no, it's gorgeous. You're not gonna see like old growth forests or anything like that. It never gets cold, like it never gets really wet enough. But you will see some really, and you're not gonna see something like you see on the Pacific coast where tree trunks that are like 3 feet wide. Like you're never going to see that. But you will see, I'll show in a future thing when I'm talking about the area that my comic is set, I'll share some images. And I'll show you like there's parts of Arizona that are thick, difficult woods to walk through. That there's a lot of growth. And the trees are close together, and it's difficult terrain, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to get anywhere back there. It's not just all, you know, whatever someone's conception of Arizona would be, or even an Arizona forest where you use some sparse pines. Like, no, there's some areas that are, I mean, you'd think you were in Colorado or something. Like it's different. That's true. That's the big thing you want to avoid when you're building in Arizona. You don't want angry Native American spirits. Your homeowner's insurance won't cover that kind of activity, just so you know. I found out the hard way. I think if my mom would still be alive, she would love to talk to you since she was an investigator for years. Oh, I did not know that. What did your mom do? So I'm out the other day, I lumped the hotter states desert, and I thought, yeah. Yeah, Arizona is it's a beautiful, diverse place. Another one that's like it, I realize I don't know a lot about Utah, that I had a picture of Utah in my head, and Utah is another place that has a lot of different kinds of terrain to visit. I'm not going to get started, but this fucking guy. All right. Yeah, it's Prescott. If you're local, it's Prescott. You throw it away. Prescott. You can always spot a transplant if it's Prescott. That's, yeah. The same with, I mean, Mugian gives people like, that's, yeah, you'll know if someone's a tourist if they're taking a shot at Mugian Rim. I do remember once, I still cringe over this because I'm the type who remembers every inartful thing I've ever done in a social situation, which there are many. I was working at this company where he wasn't the CEO, but he was like one of the executive types above us, was coming from California to visit us on site. And he invited all the leadership team, I was a supervisor, out to a happy hour after spending a day at the office. And I had had just enough to drink to not be in full diplomatic mode. Not that much. I wasn't drunk, but I'd had like a drink and a half where I was just kind of feeling a little relaxed, a little loose. And I was chit-chatting with him, and I asked him what he mentioned something about where he was staying. And I was like, so where is it at? And he's like, oh, it's a resort in Tempe. And because I was just a little buzzed, I was like, Tempe. Like, that's how I said, that was the correction. I wasn't like, oh, do you mean Tempe? Or, oh, it's actually Tempe. Oh, it's Tempe. Or just letting it go. I was like, Tempe. You know, and I still think about that. I think about the implied reprimand in my tone. I'm not proud of that. See, yeah, there's all these. One that's big here is, you can tell how long they've been here. There is a mountain just this way, you can't see it, just north of me, that is presently known as Piestewa Peak, named after a soldier, a Native American soldier who was killed in, I think, Iraq, or one of recent, like, you know, past 20 or 30 years. My entire life, and for decades before that, it was Squaw Peak. Squaw is a word that's fallen out of fashion because it's kind of a slur. Not kind of, it's, well, depends on who you're talking to. For some Native Americans, it's a slur. For others, it kind of doesn't really, it's not so much, but it's just a problematic enough word where when this opportunity came up to memorialize the soldier, they renamed the mountain Piestewa Peak. I still find myself saying Squaw Peak just because that's what it was my whole life. But that's the only people who would say Squaw Peak are people who've been here, I would say, more than 30 years, who remember it was something else. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, and see, that's that. You know what's funny about Casa Grande? Grande would be more accurate, but locals don't say it like that. Locals say Casa Grande. Yeah, yeah, it's just a few miles up the road from me. It's right there. I would be able to see it if there wasn't a building. Yeah, it was a little snotty. Okay. All right, guys. I think that's it for today. Thank you for letting me do some talk therapy about obsessive compulsive disorder in the used to make a comic. Thank you for letting me show off my hat. I think I'm going to keep this after the model. I don't like this. I could use this for something. Yeah, see, you're still a youngin', so you're not saddled with the burden of, you're not saddled with the tyranny of the past like I am. All right. So 2 weeks, like I said, I'm hoping a lot of this bullshit will be behind me, and the remaining few bits of bullshit will be far more easy for me to wrap my arms around and think about. But I'm still on track. I figure even if something weird happens and I get derailed, I'm still in a very good place to start drawing the next book mid-October. I would think at worst, I don't want to tempt fate, but like mid-October. I think I can still hit first weekend in October though. And that would be great. That would be great. And then it's a different burden, one that Josh is well acquainted with. In a way, it's routine. There's an autopilot to it. It's easier to do other things while you're doing it. While I'm drawing, it's easy to listen to music or listen to podcasts or talk to people on streaming or whatever. Like there's kind of a level of the attention is different than it is when you're, for example, building a gas station, a virtual gas station with a level of exactness. Like that's something where or writing, like writing is something where I kind of can only do, I can listen to music and that's it. Like there's nothing else I can do. So it's easier in some ways, drawing. And if I'm doing, the reason I'm doing all this time, spending all this time I am now, all the tough decisions have been made and now it's just executing. Just drawing. I know what this page looks like. I know where the panels are. I know what's in each panel. I'm just drawing it. Where it's harder is that it's far more time intensive. And that's what Josh knows. It is more or less all my discretionary time on the weekends and then wherever I can squeeze hours in the evenings during the week. So that is the grind of drawing, and also the marathon of it, where this is your life for the next 50 to 60 weeks of just, you know, there's no more lilting around like, maybe I'll watch a movie, maybe I'll watch a show, maybe I'll play a video game for a little while, maybe I'll, you know, do a little gardening. It's like, no, you have drawing to do. Like that's the tough part. So it's a different thing. It is. What did he say? Saguaro? Did he say saguaro? Okay. All right. Now I really, really am going. It's an hour and a half. That's usually what I'm trying to hit. I will see you all in 2 weeks. Oh, let's get, this is important. No, I have not. It's funny because I bought it, whatever it was, months ago. Art retreat and arbitrary drawing starting day in October kind of collapsed where I imagined I would have a void. Remember, I had been talking about how art retreat made me stay on track so I would have a lot prepared to be able to do things at the art retreat. If not for the art retreat, I might not have been that ahead. And I imagined there'd be this gap where I would be kind of just lazily doing my prep. And that would be the opportunity to do Tears of the Kingdom. So I have not done Tears of the Kingdom. And I don't know how I feel about that. It's possible I'll be able to do some casual Tears of the Kingdom play around drawing. I don't know. I do play video games while I'm drawing, but I have to be very, very disciplined about, like, okay, I'm going to mess with this for like an hour and then I'm going to walk away because I can't get lost in this all evening. Like I need to draw tonight. So, and sometimes it's like it's a little carrot system for me where like I'm not excited about drawing a certain day. So it's like, okay, look, play a video game for 45 minutes or an hour and then go draw. Like, you know, but to do, you know, like just, you can do this, but then you got to go draw, or vice versa. Like if you draw for 3 hours, then you can play Elden Ring until you go to bed, something like that. But it gets, it's what does not happen is like, I've got the afternoon free. I'm just going to sit and screw around with Zelda for an hour. Like it doesn't happen. That's what it sounds like. Howdy. All right, guys. Hope whatever you're working on is going well. Feel free to promote whatever you want to promote in the comments. And I will be checking back in about 2 weeks. Ta-ta.